So I would encourage everybody to continue to revisit that because it's been updated very frequently. This session tonight is going to be a little bit different in that the last several all had a large component in which we were trying to present the key elements of the plan and at the same time answer many of those frequently asked questions. We've done that. It's recorded. People can still reference that if they'd like, but we really wanted to move to the point where we're able to just focus on directly answering your questions, whether they be in writing or in some cases, some people want to ask those questions directly. So we're going to take a team approach with this. We have our administrative team with us tonight, and any number of people will be chiming in to help answer the questions that you have. We also are glad to have Mr. Eric Feist, who's the Director of Public Health for Madison County, once again joining us tonight. So with that being said, we want to get into the process here. So I'm going to turn it over to our Assistant Superintendent, Chris Clancy, to tell us what this is going to look like.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Chris Clancy. I'm the Assistant Superintendent. Good to see you all here, and welcome back to folks who have joined us for previous sessions. So as Mr. Becerra shared, the intention or the purpose of tonight is to give parents and guardians another opportunity to ask us some questions, to provide some clarity to the reopening process and what school is going to look like. So we're going to kind of do it in two different phases. The first thing that we wanted to do is to address some questions that have been submitted in kind of a large volume. So we've received lots of questions around certain topics. We wanted to talk about those with you first for a few moments, and then we'll open the floor to all of you if you have some other specific questions that you'd like to ask. So what I'd recommend to folks is while we're sharing this information with you, I would encourage you to submit your question through the chat to our Director of Instructional Support Services, Karen Henner. She'll kind of look through those and she'll reach out to you to ask whether or not you want to ask that question live, or if you would like her to refer the question to us. But use the chat as a place to post those questions right now. We are recording tonight's meeting, so we'll post this recording as well. And the piece that we actually wanted to start with tonight is with our second video in our reopening video series. So Mr. Becerra has shared some information with that and some of his weekly superintendent's updates. And what our attempt is to illustrate some of the things that we're sharing. So we've published in writing all of our specific reopening plans. And through these videos, we're trying to just show folks what some of those things look like. So we released our first video last week, I believe, and that was around cleaning protocols. So that demonstrated to our community kind of what cleaning is going to look like in the district. Our second video addresses some of the social distancing and facilities kinds of measures we've taken in each of our school buildings. So far on our website, we've published a video for Peterborough Street and what that looks like there, and for Southside. And the Robert Street and Junior Senior High videos should be coming within the next day or two. So we'll publish those as well. So we wanted to share one with you tonight just to give you a sense of what those look like as a second video in our series. So I'm going to do that next. And I'm sharing my screen with everyone. So I'm looking at, or you're all looking at the district website. And if you scroll down on the web page, this is where our reopening videos are going to be embedded. So every time a new video is published, this is where it will land. So I'm going to play, I believe this is the Peterborough video for everybody.
Welcome to Peterborough Street Elementary School. My name is Jenny Carnahan, and I am the principal here. And I'd like to show and tell you a little bit about reopening and what that's going to look like here at Peterborough Street. You will notice we are set up following all safety guidelines and protocols. This includes social distancing markers on the floor to help us know 6 feet apart, as well as in hallways, stairwells, and the doorways. Bussers will be entering as per usual through the south door. Walkers will be entering through the front door. Additional staffing will be available to assist during arrival and dismissal times. Lunch will be set up in classrooms as well as the cafeteria. If students are eating in their classrooms, lunch will be delivered to them, and our desks are set up 6 feet apart. Like in this first grade classroom, you'll notice the desks are spaced apart appropriately, and they are all facing in the same direction. We have a new setup in our cafeteria for students who will be eating there. We have removed our tables and replaced them with desks that are set up 6 feet apart, all facing the same direction. Specials at Peterborough Street will be on a cart, except for phys ed. Art, music, and library will all come to classrooms for students. Book exchanges will be possible in the library with special protocols in place for that. PE will take place either in the gym, and you'll notice that we have 12-foot spaces following the guidelines marked off for student self-space. If the weather cooperates, students will be outside for PE.
So that gives you a sense, or hopefully a little bit of a lens into what some of those items look like at Peterborough Street. And again, on our website, there's a video currently published for Southside Elementary. Mr. Tobby has a tour of that building. And within the next day or two, there'll be a video for Robert Street and the junior senior high. So that's our second topic in a series of videos that we're publishing, again, just to try to help everyone see what.
Hello, Canastota. My name is Nick Pinuccio, the Executive Director of Finance and Operations for the district. As our superintendent has stated, we're going to be doing a series of videos based on our reopening plan. For the first one, our reopening plan, please look at this video.
It's always a treat if we have a special unanticipated presentation from Mr. Pinuccio. So.
Sorry about that. So continue to play the next video. So what I was really trying to show you there is that we have a series of videos that we can, that you're welcome to watch on our YouTube channel. That one was about a different topic. That was the cleaning protocol video. So those are on our website and our YouTube channel. So again, please watch those to learn a little bit more about how we're addressing some of the items in our reopening plan. So thanks for your attention. I think at this point, I will ask Mrs. Henner if she has some questions that we can address as a group.
Thank you, Mr. Clancy. Actually, yes, we have several questions coming in, and I was trying to get back to everybody that has asked the question, but the stream is coming in so fast. So I have a couple of questions that we want to ask that we didn't get a chance to answer maybe last time. And then what I'm going to do is kind of as questions came in the order that they came in, I'll try to unmute that person if I can find that person and ask if you'd like to ask your question, and you can of course decline at that time and I'll ask your question for you, if that sounds good. There's just, there are so many questions and they're all really good questions. One of the questions that we have been getting a lot, because it is a change in calendar that was, originally designed, is that when is the first day of school for students?
All right. Given the fact that we had so many new things that we need to work with our staff on so that they can properly and adequately interact with our students and give them direction, the district is going to essentially front load our staff development days this year. Originally, back a number of months ago, we had established 2 days, September 2nd and 3rd, is our staff development days, with the beginning of the students' schedule on Tuesday, September 8th, the day after Labor Day. We had since modified that to move 2 additional staff development days, Tuesday, September 8th, and Wednesday, September 9th. So the first day that students will actually be engaged with their teachers is scheduled for Thursday, September 10th. So we'll continue to promote that, get that out there. That's been pretty typical practice. Most districts, I think, are doing similar things, that they've recognized the need to have additional days to make sure that everybody's adequately prepared when we do welcome students back into the buildings.
Great, thank you. And then kind of following up on with another calendar item, will the district be hosting a traditional open house as was marked on the calendar for September 2nd?
There's still several things in the works as far as how can we creatively and productively engage families with open house. The circumstances have really made it impossible for us to do it in the way we'd like. It's not, we don't think a sound plan for us to be able to just invite people into the building and have large amounts of people congregating. And so the tradition, are we having a traditional open house? No. We feel that would not be a good plan. We are currently developing some ways in which we can positively engage people and still bring them up to speed and familiarize them with important things for their child's education, but without having to physically be there in a traditional setting. So, and the principals may want to add something to that. But I know that there's more to come on that shortly. Any of the principals want to comment on that as well?
Sure, Mr. Becerra. Just that for the secondary level, to look for a virtual event of some sort, talking about some of the differences between like elementary school and junior high school for 7th graders, and then the difference between high school and junior high school for the new 9th graders.
Another question that has been asked previously, and it's kind of within some of the questions that are here, so we might get a follow-up question to this. What would happen when students are sick at home on their remote learning days? I think what is a student or the family expected to do when they're homesick?
I'm happy to address that, and I hope I explain it well. But if you are sick, you are sick, and if you are sick and you're unable to attend a remote learning, then you simply would not attend, and you would be marked absent. However, if you are sick and you are home and you are still capable of joining the remote learning, we would certainly encourage you to do so. But essentially, if you are not there, either in person or remotely, then you will be marked absent.
Okay, great. In another question that was submitted previously, how is the school going to de-densify critical times at the school? For instance, when students are arriving and departing, will they be all coming to school at the same time and going in the same entrance?
I think each of the buildings can speak directly to what, for example, when kids are arriving at school. I would say that across the district, there's going to be multiple entrance points that are obviously needing to be supervised by staff members, but we certainly wanted to spread out how students are entering the building. They'll be reminded consistently that the same thing applies. You know, when they're moving from the bus or coming in from the car, they still are expected to maintain adequate distancing. And as they enter the building, maybe we can have the principals talk a little bit more about what the what that looks like in each of the
Sure,
buildings.
I can start with Peterborough Street, Mr. Becerra. So our students who are riding buses will come in, as I mentioned in the video, they'll come in the south door, which is their usual bus. We won't unload 5 buses all at once, of course. We will stagger that appropriately. And then we're going to be asking that our walkers or students who are dropped off at school will be entering via our front doors, and we will have staff available there to guide and assist, but we'll have 2 separate entrances, you know, to make sure that we're keeping appropriate distances.
I can speak for Southside. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Rob Tobby, the Southside Elementary School principal. We'll have multiple entrances as well. The 3rd grade students will enter up by the gymnasium door. The 2nd grade students will enter by the office door, and walkers will enter and the walker door on the side of the building.
In terms of Robert Street, thank you, Mr. Tobby. In terms of Robert Street, we'll be utilizing entrance B, entrance C, and entrance D, as well as the high school foyer for our bus students. Students will be entering and exiting the building through those specific doors with adult supervision at each of those doors, with additional staff in the hallways and in stairwells, so that we continue to remind students about mask and social distancing. So they basically will be handed off from adult to their classroom to make sure that there's supervision along every step of the way, especially for our 3rd to 4th grade students, this being a new school and not having that traditional open house and curriculum night. It's going to be important for us to guide them for those, you know, first few weeks.
And at the junior senior high school, we have a similar model like Robert Street does. However, supervision is an issue. So there will be some correspondence about asking families and or walkers not to come prior to 7:30 because the building will not be able to open until 7:30. And we'll probably let walkers in at 7:30 on the side door and enter into the cafeteria and before being released into the hallways and towards their classrooms. And then we spoke with transportation, and transportation will not be letting the bus riders off until 7:35. And then they will get off the bus, enter through the tunnel doors, and then go to their lockers. And then and as Mr. Faustino, I mentioned, there'll be supervision at each location.
And again, throughout this, and these will be shown in all of the videos for each of the buildings, some of the high traffic areas, like in the hallway between classes. One thing to keep in mind is, you know, hallways are going to look different because we don't have nearly as many kids by splitting the cohorts. The hallways are not going to be nearly as crowded as they typically would be in a normal year. And also those visual reminders that they're expected to maintain that distance as they move through the hallways as well. So there will not be scenes that I know have made you know, some of the they've been highlighted by some of the media outlets. We're not going to have packed hallways of kids, you know, standing right next to each other. And they also will be wearing masks as they're moving around the building as well.
Okay. At this point, it's about time in our presentation where I'm going to start to open it up to some of the questions that have been submitted in the group chat. So I'm going to ask Jennifer Maloney to unmute herself, and if she's comfortable, to ask her question. Go ahead, Jennifer.
Hi, I was just wondering, with the split days and kids starting on September 10th, the kids through N through Z, are they going to start on the 11th instead?
So a little bit more to come on that, but essentially, even though they're in a different cohort, they should be starting on the same day, but they just would start remotely. So the kids who would start in cohort 2, they will still start with their peers who are in person during cohort 1 on that same day.
Okay. The second question submitted, actually, it's been requested that I ask on their behalf. So it's a question wondering why we as a district don't have an option for 5 days of in-person instruction each week for elementary school districts, like some other districts are offering.
Yeah, that's been a frequent question, and what we've tried to lay out in some of our previous presentations was some districts who were able. There are a couple of factors. One is the space that you actually have and the size of the rooms and the number of instructional staff that you have to teach those classes and their certifications. So that's one factor. The other factor is some of the neighboring districts have elected to not, in some cases, send their middle school students or their high school students at all. And one of the priorities from the beginning for us as a district, and again, we realized everybody doesn't always agree with this, but we felt it was important to have every student, K through 12, have the opportunity to be in the district for in-person instruction and interaction with our staff at least a couple of days a week as a base schedule. The reason we say that is I think, you know, you work with kids over many years and you see the different challenges at every grade level. And I think you can really make a strong argument. And I think there's a lot of strong research that suggests that when we're dealing with kids, a lack of in-person interaction at any level over extended periods of time can be very difficult. So we made the decision that every student would have access to in-person. That obviously, when you make that decision, limits us being able to spread out, for example, elementary classes throughout the district. But the other issue with that is you still have limitations with how many teachers you have that are certified to teach that class. We still wanted to have certified instructors in that area teaching those students. And we also felt that it was important that a lot of the additional services that we would provide, for example, different intervention programs, still existed in some form. We didn't want to just remove those teachers from that function. So those are several of the reasons why. Having said that, we also have made it a point to ask for feedback from parents in a number of cases that Wednesday can be used for additional in-person interaction with students. If parents have not talked to their child's building principal, I would encourage them to do so if there's still a concern in that area. Okay, because everybody has their 2-day base schedule, but that third day option could be a viable option for a number of students. We'll work with you on what would make sense. And finally, there are some students who may be in district 4 or 5 days based on some specific needs that they would have. Again, that just needs to be a discussion. So if you feel like you have those kinds of questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to your child's building principal. We'd be glad to work with you on that process. We are just asking that people are, number one, you reach out to us directly. Number two, please understand that we will do everything we can to work with you and accommodate requests that to do the best thing for your child. It, in some cases, it just takes a little bit of time to piece it together. You know, what things look like today might look a little different a week from now or 2 weeks from now as we're able to have these conversations. I understand that that's frustrating sometimes because everybody wants to know the exact schedule. It's impossible for us to have an exact schedule because we just haven't had, at this point, all the necessary conversations with parents. So please, if that's something that's on your mind, please reach out directly to the building principals, and we'll go from there to see if you know, 3rd, 4th, or even 5 days can be accommodated. And I don't know if anybody else wants to add to that.
Our next question is coming from Stephanie. So Stephanie, I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself, and if you'd like Stephanie has a question about when and if there's a positive COVID case, what will that look like? So Stephanie, if you're able, go ahead. Can't hear you, Stephanie.
Is she muted?
She is not muted. Okay, Stephanie, and if you do finally get sound, just chime in and you can take over for me. But going back to her question now, I can scroll up, I apologize. If a positive COVID case comes, will the school close again? What will that look like? And then come flu season with coughing and sniffles, are our children going to be made to get tested for COVID?
All right, I think this might be a good question to ask Eric Feist to talk to us a little bit more about what that looks like when there is a positive case in the district, whether it's a student or a staff member. Eric, could you sort of explain that process to us?
Sure, I will. Thank you, first of all, for allowing me to be part of this discussion. I appreciate it. How this would happen is that, first of all, the Madison County Health Department receives all test results for residents in Madison County. So we would get positive test result probably before the school would know, unless in some case they would contact the school, but usually we would get the test result. We would then reach out to that individual who tested positive and identify or ask them a whole series of questions. We would do our investigation to better understand who they may have come into contact with, when, how long, were they wearing face masks, a variety of other questions that we would be asking. Based on that information, we would identify individuals who were potentially exposed. We would then also reach out to the school district to confirm, whether it's a student or staff, that they were there that day, where they were during their time in the school, to find out if there's any further exposures that we need to be aware of. Based on that information, the individual who's positive would be placed into isolation, and the individuals who were exposed to the positive case would be placed in quarantine. And those quarantines for a two-week period. The isolation is based on their symptoms and their illness and how sick they become. We only share the information about the positive individual with school leadership in order to understand all the potential exposures within the school. We do not share that information with anyone else or publish that information whatsoever due to HIPAA confidentiality requirements. So those individuals would go into isolation and quarantine. The decision whether or not to close the school is going to be dependent on a conversation between my office and between Mr. Besetta's office. It's going to be depending on a variety of different factors. It's going to be, depending on how many individuals may be positive or in quarantine. It may deal with, we may see a rise in just positive cases in general within that community outside of the school. There's a variety of factors that we'll take into consideration and look at whether or not it is, do we need to close the whole school? Do we need to close a classroom? Do we need to close a wing or what have you? But the ultimate decision to close will be left to Mr. Besetta, but it'll be with our guidance in making that decision.
Now, can you hear me yet?
Yes.
Okay, now if our child does end up having to quarantine, would they be in our own home, correct?
We prefer to quarantine in your own home if possible. My staff would be in contact with you and your family to determine if your home is conducive for them to be quarantined there. They'd have to have their own room. We prefer them to have their own bathroom, but if they don't, we understand that. We give guidance on proper cleaning so that, if others have to use the bathroom, we would go over that all with you and making sure that that's a good situation for that. And then we would also identify if there's any additional needs that you may need. It's part of my office's responsibility to make sure that those needs get met for you and your family.
Okay, and then if our child is in quarantine, they would go strictly to remote learning, right? For the 2 weeks? Is that how it would work?
Yes, that way, you know, there's at least loss of instruction, right? So the idea is that, you know, one of the nice things about the remote learning is that there's very little instructional loss if the child continues to participate. So that's what we would certainly recommend.
Okay.
Thank you,
There was,
Stephanie.
there was also a second part of that question that had to do with, I think, cold and flu.
Yes.
Yeah. If like with cold and flu season, if a child has a cough or sniffles, would they be forced to take the COVID testing?
Not necessarily, and I'll give you, for example. First of all, taking a step back, it's going to be imperative then that I would recommend, and I've heard this from the school, so I believe that they're in good shape in doing this. It's going to be imperative that the school nurse has a good relationship with you and understands the health conditions of your child, because some individuals have underlying conditions like asthma or other conditions that produce symptoms that may be similar to COVID, and so on and so forth. So your nurse understanding your child as well, it's going to be key to get with your primary care provider for your child. They know them and they know if those symptoms or issues are COVID or there's something else that's normally occurring, an underlying condition with your student. So we would advise that the nurse is going to talk with you, look at the student, they're going to seek the guidance for their medical advisor, as well as your primary care provider. And they will be key in determining whether the child is home ill. They may have a strep throat or they may have something else. They can determine that, and then based on that information, they may be able to go back to school based on the provider's recommendation. However, if they do have COVID-like symptoms and they can't discount COVID, they will have to get a negative. They will have to get tested in order to go back. But however, if they test positive and go into quarantine, you can't test out of those, so you have to stay in those. But,
okay.
and I will say that it's a huge question statewide, and the answer we got today from the state is more guidance is on its way. So that could change tomorrow.
And I think
that's current.
I think we have maybe some of our nurses may also be on the call. I don't know if they want to talk a little bit about what they've been working on and how they've been coordinating with health department or our medical director.
Sorry.
If I may add just one other thing, just because you just brought up a point, Mr. Becerra, to let you know, my office and my staff are actually meeting weekly with the school nurses to have these kind of conversations to make sure that we're consistently looking at this and understanding some of the nuances so we can address those questions. We want to be realistic and practical, but at the same time, we also want to make sure that we're protecting the health and safety of everyone. So it's going to be a situation by situation basis, but we'll do what we can to make sure they go in the direction they need to for that.
Mrs. Gardenier just came into the meeting unmuted, so she wants to respond.
Yes.
Okay.
Eric, you said exactly what the nurses have been discussing. And yes, we started meeting last week with the Department of Health, and we did discuss that. We definitely need the communication with the parents. It's very, very important that you as parents communicate with your school nurse and build that relationship, because we do want to look at the overall picture of the student. You know, if this is something that is typical for them in this season, if they are prone to having colds and asthma in this season, then we will definitely look at the overall picture and discuss that with you. You will get a phone call from us if your child comes to our office, and we will definitely have that conversation. If we have any concerns, we'll discuss that. We will encourage you to see your physician And then once the physician has seen your child, then we'll go from there. Hopefully, they will know your child, determine whether or not this is something that is COVID or not COVID related, and then we'll go from there. We will need, if we see your child in school and we determine that they have 2 or more symptoms that are not their typical baseline, we will definitely need documentation that they have seen a physician before they can return to school. We will be providing information, algorithm information for you, so you can look and see, okay, if they have this, I need to do this. We'll have lots of instructional material for you so that you can reference that. And you can always call us at any time if you have any questions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Gardner.
Unfortunately, we're not going to get to answer all of the great questions that have come in, and I've indicated within the chat box that one of the really nice features about Zoom is that I can capture all of the questions that were asked tonight, and be sure that we are working as an admin team to continually make updates to our frequently asked questions online. Several questions that have come in during the chat actually can be answered in that frequently asked question document that is posted on our website in our reopening plan section. So I encourage you to keep an eye on that, especially every week. We're trying to make 1 or 2 updates to that as we get answers to these questions that are coming in. I do have our next questions coming from someone that actually asked multiple questions. Her name is Heidi. So I'm going to ask Heidi to unmute, and I'm going to ask you if you could just maybe pick one of the questions and ask that right now, please, Heidi.
Sure. No.
I'm sorry, did you ask me to ask one of the questions?
Pick your favorite question, Heidi, the one that you most want the answer to.
Okay. I did wonder if the kids, and I think maybe this was partially answered earlier actually, if they'll be doing the specials, the gym, music, art, library, and will they have recess time outside? Can go along with that, I guess.
Perfect.
Do our principals want to address that one?
Sure, it's a great question, because it's important that we continue to provide as much of a normal school day as possible. So all specials will be on a cart and in their classroom, so we can cut down on transition times in the hallway and throughout the school. Your art would be into the classroom, library would come to the students' classroom, and music would come to the students' classroom. Physical education markers have already been marked off in the gymnasium so that we can maintain the extended social distancing, which goes from 6 to 12 feet, which is a little bit different than what we would normally be used to. So specials are still intact. We'll be continuing to follow a 6-day schedule. So we're trying to provide as much normal as we possibly can during this time. And then on Wednesdays, we're looking to offer enrichment during those days, both virtually and in person as well. So much more to come, but yes, we're going to try to stay as normal as possible with those special offerings.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, our next question comes from Diamond. So Diamond, I'm going to ask you to unmute and ask your question.
My question was concerning last year we had a pre-K, and he was able to get a video that was recorded if he was not able to get in part with the meeting and participate in the meeting. Is that going to be an option for the next grade up, kindergarten, if he's not able to log in for the day at daycare? If they're not able to for some reason, will that be marked as an absent? Is he able to log back in on a recorded session? We enjoyed the recorded session so that we can play a part after work when we got home, and we can all do it together. It worked out last year.
Diamond, I'm happy to answer that question. We are being mindful of the fact that our youngest students aren't able to log in and watch a video independently. So being mindful of that, but knowing that engagement and that FaceTime and daily interactions is important. What we're looking to do is to record those lessons and to have them available to you just like you were used to with pre-K, so that you could watch them later when it's more convenient for you, and then be able to comment, and that would count as attendance. It's going to look a little bit different at Peterborough Street with our youngest students because of their lack of independence. We know that we're going to teach them and train them, and they're going to gain a lot of independence with the technology. But you can look for a similar setup and approach to what you were used to last year in the spring in pre-K.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Carnahan. That's a question that's come up quite frequently. There's still so many questions left, so I know that we had gauged that we were going to end maybe at 5:45. Do you want me to take a couple more questions?
Yeah, why don't we see if we can take a few more?
Okay.
Let's keep it going for a few minutes.
Okay. Let's see. I'm trying to get, a lot of these questions came in from the same people, so I'm trying to give somebody else a chance. So, and some of them are repeated. So, this.
Well, Mrs. Henner is going through that. I just want to remind people, we said, you know, I think in all of these sessions that our goal was never to just do the minimal standard of meetings. So we did our third meeting for parents and community technically last week, but we still wanted to schedule this. It looks like we have a good number of participants on the call. We would like to answer some more questions now, but we will do what people are asking us to do, and that if people are finding this to be valuable, we will schedule more in the coming days and weeks. So if the feedback we're getting is you still like to have this type of opportunity to ask questions, we'll still put them up and answer questions through the videos we put out. We'll still try to answer questions through the frequently asked question page, but we still are certainly receptive to having this type of interaction as well. So if that's something people are asking for, we will schedule more. And we'll continue that as we go into the year. My guess is after we start, we'll probably have another whole new wave of questions with things that are new for the first time. And we appreciate everybody's patience because nobody's really dealt with anything like this before. So we appreciate your patience, and we also appreciate your participation. The questions that you ask make our plan better. And so don't hesitate to continue to ask them. So Karen, is there another?
I did. I found one. This is Mr. Brown. He's unmuted and ready to go.
Kind of a two-part question. For the kids in the older grades, junior and senior high, will they be using their lockers, going to the lockers and using the lockers, and will they be changing classrooms during the school day?
Yes, as of now, we are planning to schedule lockers within cohorts. So like the cohorts would be next to each other, and there'll be a space for lockers. So that'll give us time in between days to clean lockers and to kind of wipe them down. And they will be transitioning from classroom to classroom. You know, they'll be required to kind of stay on the right side of the hallway and try to spread out as much as possible. You know, our message is certainly going to be this. We will be at half capacity, so there'll be less kids in the hallways. So that'll be nice. We will actually be at less than half capacity, especially when you tack on all the remote learners. So yeah, so we'll be using lockers, and they will have to pass from classroom to classroom. You know, we certainly looked at a model where the teachers would move instead of the kids, but the secondary level, especially in the high school, it doesn't work that way because you have kids in different classes that have different grade levels, and not all the kids stay in one class together. So that just wouldn't work. So in this case, they will be transitioning.
Great. More questions, Mr. Becerra?
Yeah, why don't we take another one if you have it?
Okay. All right. So maybe asking Julie H. It looks like she's gone offline. So I'm going to ask her question for her. Is the school going to be handling like schoolwork the same way we handled it previously for paper copies and work submission? And when will the kids receive their Chromebooks and supplies?
So I can speak to the Chromebook and supply question. So we will be announcing that process within the next few days, what that pickup process is going to look like. So to answer the question, yes, we're going to deliver the materials in the same way in terms of scheduling time for families and students to come to outside of the school building to pick those materials up. So we started working on that detail. And like I said, we'll announce that in the next few days to families so that you know when you'll be able to pick those materials up. Those materials would be picked up before the start of the school year for students so that they're ready to begin with what they need. Any principals want to add any detail to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think as far as getting some materials and supplies, our hope is that, or our goal is that we're going to transition almost everything digitally so that students who are in person and remote can do some of the work and do some of those assignments simultaneously. So if there is ever a time where we have to really distribute some items, then yes, we may have to look at a type of distribution model, especially for the remote learners. The cohort, the hybrid learners will be in school, so we'll be able to get them their materials. But for the remote only learners, yes, we may at times have to do some sort of pick up and drop off.
Okay, thank you.
I'm wondering, while we have him on the meeting with us here, Eric had talked last time about, because there were some questions about, was the mobile testing units, was that something that was being discussed? And it sounded like last time there were some discussions. I think since then in the media, there have been some things that have come out, you know, in some places. So I don't know, Eric, could you just address that or give us, I guess, a progress report of, is anything in the works or is anything being discussed with capacity for some type of mobile testing situation?
Right. Yeah, actually, we had a phone call this morning with Upstate Medical, the laboratory. Unfortunately, they're also coordinating the mobile testing with Onondaga County, so they're committed with Onondaga County for the next 2 weeks. We won't get their mobile unit until 2 weeks from now, but they promised they would be providing that to us, as well as that would be ongoing after 2 weeks, where it would come out. We're hoping at least once to 2 times per week to different sites within the county. So we're hoping that capacity comes on soon, but it'll probably be mid-September by that time. We're also looking at, we've been in contact with Walmart, as well as, so some of you may know that Walmart had testing capacity in their parking lot for a few months early, like in April and May. We've requested that they bring that back if they possibly can. We're still waiting for clearance from the corporate headquarters on that. The county, we also, that's why a lot of our testing, we ask people to go through their provider, because a lot of providers, at least in Madison County with the 2 hospital systems, if the provider's in one of their networks, you go to the provider, they'll get you sent to the hospital for testing. Hospitals won't just test anyone that walks in. We do have a WellNow clinic in Oneida that does accept people to walk in for testing as well. We encourage you to use that. We also post on our website a variety of testing facilities within our region. So if you live maybe on the western part of the county, there may be closer to go to Manlius or Fayetteville for a test, even if it's outside of the county. So we post that information as well. We consistently or continuously are in contact with our pharmacies to see if they would be able to provide testing, and unfortunately not at this time. And the health department is going to be getting some funds from the state to expand some of our staffing capacity. And if and when we can get something like that, we may have the ability to do some small amount of testing with my staff. I only have a handful of people on staff that can do this. And so if we get those resources, which we hope to in the next few weeks, we'll be able to do some potential testing if need be. So we would look to do that if we had a case or something in a school district where we may have a concern that there may be more going on here, then I would be able to deploy my actual staff to do some testing. So we're hoping to have that capacity real soon.
Okay, so that sounds promising. Sounds like there's more to come, and that's sort of in working its way through the conversations that need to happen. So so I know we're closing in on 6 o'clock. Again, we want to thank everybody who participated tonight. As Karen said, we're able to save these questions that you've posed to us. We will continue to update those questions on our frequently asked questions site. And if you would like more of these types of interactive sessions, we certainly will look to schedule more of them. Also want to thank Eric for being with us. He's been at not only the 3 we did last week, we had done a session just for students last week as well. We had done a couple of sessions for our staff members. But we appreciate him being with us again. I will say that having worked with him and his team on a number of cases over the months, I don't think there's been a time where I've called Eric and he hasn't answered it. He's always takes the call, always is ready to provide us with direction. And, we've been meeting on a weekly basis as a regional superintendent group, but our interaction usually extends far beyond that. We're usually calling and emailing and texting people and him and his team. So we appreciate that. We also appreciate it, as he alluded to, that our nurses are working closely with the health department. So I think we're trying to do the best we can to have all of the key pieces together. Certainly one of the huge key pieces is our families and our community. And so, again, don't hesitate to continue to ask those questions. We'll continue to answer them in this forum and in our written frequently asked questions sections. So thank you very much. Hope everybody has a good rest of their Tuesday. And we look forward to seeing you, if not in the traditional way around school, we still look forward to connecting with you in a variety of ways. So thank you very much. Have a good night.